Hi, and welcome back to the show. With me now is registered psychologist Dr. Patricia Doris. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to talk a little bit about stress today. Absolutely. Hope you're not feeling too stressed coming in to talk to us.
A little bit of stress is okay.
That's right. So tell us, what is stress?
Well, I think absolutely, like you said, stress first and foremost is mediated by the nervous system. So it is our flight or fight response kicking into gear. And as you had said, a little bit of that, or for short periods, is perfectly healthy. But when we have that ongoing, chronic, low-level, continuous flight or fight response being activated, we start to feel uncomfortable, we start to quote-unquote feel stressed, and that's what we typically talk about when we talk about stress in our culture, is that sort of slow and steady, uncomfortable feeling of tension, uncomfortable feeling of not being able to quite cope with everything that we've got going on.
Okay, and how does that nervous system mediated response, how does that affect our health and how does it make us sick?
Well, it happens in one of two ways. The first is physiologically. So again, having some of those stress hormones and chemicals in our bloodstream works really, really well in getting us moving. But when they're elevated, particularly, for example, cortisol levels, we know from the research that over time, those elevated levels can cause health problems. Chronically elevated hormone levels can negatively affect the thyroid. Currently, people talk about it increasing abdominal fat, which predisposes us to other health difficulties. It can negatively affect bone density and lean muscle. And the list really goes on and on. The other way that elevated stress levels can impact us is it encourages us to engage in maladaptive behaviors. And so we start doing things that aren't healthy for us, which then of course undermine our physical health as well, not to mention our emotional health.
So what are some of those behaviors? And obviously, I guess people on a rational level would know they're not necessarily good for them, but
Absolutely.
They engage in them for that coping mechanism. So how is it that you see that in your practice and just what you've seen?
The way that I look at coping as being adaptive or maladaptive is that a maladaptive coping behavior is one that, although it will make you feel better in the moment, which is why we do it, it will have some kind of secondary negative effect. Whereas an adaptive coping behavior, you do it, it helps you feel better, but it doesn't then harm you in some way. So maladaptive coping behaviors are often the indulgences, the things we do too much of. We eat too much, we drink too much, we gamble too much, we shop too much. We get overwhelmed with our emotional responses, we yell, we get upset, we have conflict. And so all of these things, either physically or emotionally or even relationally, cause us some kind of harm. We then either feel bad about ourselves, we feel bad in our relationships, or we're physically less healthy than we were before.
Okay, and you've mentioned that people have these behaviors, and there's some people that just ignore stress altogether. Mm-hmm. Why do some people do that?
I think in part people get overwhelmed. They feel that they can't do anything about the stressors in their life. They feel like there's too many of them or they're too big. And I think as well that people sort of think of stress typically as something that doesn't really count. If they come in and they, for example, in my practice, people will complain about various health problems related to stress. They have headaches, they have gastrointestinal difficulties. It negatively affects their diabetes or their heart disease. But they talk about it in a way as though because it's stress related and not primarily a physical cause, somehow it doesn't count. So if it's a stress headache, it's not really a headache. Or if it's stress causing an increase in blood pressure, then that can't really harm them. But of course we know that because stress is mediated through our nervous system, our body, everything that happens really does count. So although it's easy to sort of just say, oh, it's just stress, it's just as important as having the flu or having some other physical problem.
That's great. I think that that will be helpful for a lot of people that are dealing with stress.
I hope
because
so.
I think that culturally that's what we do. We just kind of slough it off. I just got to deal with it. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. We talked before about how the stress response is sometimes a good thing. So is all stress bad for us?
Absolutely not. Some stress is, first of all, expected. Our body is designed to handle stress. Our body is designed to produce that response for a reason. And as long as we have that response in moderation, or we have that response for short periods of time, it happens. We can even use it, for example, to become energized, as you were earlier saying, to enhance performance, and really to do our best at times. It's only when that stress level becomes chronic, becomes elevated for long periods of time, and starts to really wear down our bodies or make us feel overwhelmed or helpless, does stress actually become a problem.
Okay. Yeah, I have a lovely analogy for this.
Yes.
I was told that stress is like a violin. In order to have beautiful music, you have to have a certain amount of tension on the strings. But if you have strings that are too loose, well, you're not going to get that great performance. If you have strings that are too tight, they may break. So I think that that's relevant for human performance as well, and human health too. So
Absolutely.
So yes, let's make beautiful music and not have too much stress. All right, so since changing behaviors and getting away from that stressful mechanism or trying to cope, sometimes it can be a big, overwhelming thing to change all at once. So what are some things that people can do to start the process to change a little bit at a time?
I sort of think of stress management as being two separate things. One is the things that we can do in the moment. If you're having a stressful day, you're feeling overwhelmed, and the idea of making life changes is just way too big and way too stressful, then there are things that we can do literally in the moment that can help us. I think of it as the 1-minute solution. And is it going to change your life? No. But is it going to help you cope with stress? Yes. And what I encourage people to do, if they can only give me 1 minute in their day, is to take that minute, stop everything that you're doing. And you can do this, in the middle of a kitchen with 3 screaming children around you, or in the middle of an office, or in the middle of a business meeting. A minute is typically not hard for people to give up. Stop for that 1 minute. Try to get into a comfortable position. Seated is great. Hey, if you can lie down, even better. And take first one slow, quiet, deeper breath than the one before. Right? In a minute, you might get a few breaths, you might get several breaths. The idea is that you want to just slow down your breathing. You want to soften and deepen it, right? So you want to get it right into the belly, and you want it to be quiet. A lot of times when people talk about deep breathing, they talk about, I do deep breathing all the time when they're stressed, and I say, well, show me what that looks like. And they'll say, well, that is not a breath that encourages relaxation, right? And that's the goal, is for 1 minute, we want to get your body from wherever it's at to one step lower. We want to take that down 1 notch. And what I encourage people to do just for that 1 minute while they're trying to just slow down their breath is to think about one thing that they can feel grateful for. There's a difference between knowing you're grateful for something and feeling grateful, right? So I try to make that distinction, because we can list all kinds of things that we know we're grateful for, but it doesn't necessarily translate into a feeling. The really special thing about feeling gratitude is that it's very pleasurable. It feels good to feel grateful about things. And that kind of pleasure can stimulate, again, responses in the human body that are the opposite of the stress response. So in essence, the relaxation response. So 1 minute of slow your breath and really focus on trying to generate a feeling of gratitude can make a huge difference over the course of a day. And if you can give me another minute, later in the day, even better.
And once people have gotten past this minute and they've incorporated it into their lives regularly, what's the next step? How can they make a bigger change in terms of managing stress?
There are a lot of things that people can do to manage stress, and I always encourage my clients to find the things that work for them. We hear a lot about stress management, and there are lists upon lists of things that we can do. Ideally, we have to find what works for us individually. But there are a few areas or a few categories that I encourage people to look at. One is, again, going back to the body, is stress management associated with physiological functioning. Stress is the flight or fight response, and the complete opposite to that, the antithesis to that, is the relaxation response. And there are 2 systems in our body, one designed to rev us up and one designed to calm that system down. So anything that increases relaxation and anything that helps to sort of use up or burn off those stress chemicals can be really helpful. So whether it's physical exercise, and again, you don't necessarily need a formal program. Go for a walk, go for a swim, go outside and play with the kids, take your dog for a walk, go hit a golf ball, go hit a tennis ball. Doesn't matter, just do something, move your body, and enjoy it. Other things that people can do, yoga, meditation, take a bubble bath, relax and listen to some awesome music. Anything that just helps your body slow down and come down. The one thing that I encourage people to recognize is that tuning out is not the same thing as relaxation. So, crashing in front of the TV or sort of zoning out to a video game, it may not feel stressful, but it's also not bringing you down from that neutral level that you might be at, right? So relaxation is a little bit calmer than that. It's helping your body slow.
Okay. We have a couple of seconds left. Can you just tell us, if people want to get a hold of you and use your services to help manage their stress, how can they contact you?
People are welcome to give me a call at my office, which I think you're going to be showing the number. And I also have a website, www.drdoris.ca, and anyone's welcome to send me an email through that as well.
All right. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to take a look now at our health and wellness action tip of the day. Hi there, and welcome to today's health and wellness action tip. Today we're talking about something that affects all of us, and that is stress. Stress is designed by your body to save your life, and it's only supposed to last for a couple of minutes. But in our busy hustle-bustle culture, it lasts for hours and hours, potentially days and days. So one of the things that you can do to take yourself out of the stress response, to take yourself out of fight or flight, is to take control of your breath. Breath is one of the things in the stress response that you have control over. You don't have control over whether or not your blood pressure is going up or whether your heart rate is increasing, but you can change your breath. So when people say take a breath, it really is relevant to reducing your stress levels. So what you're going to do is take your hands, put them on your belly. A lot of us, when we're stressed, only breathe into our chest. So we want to breathe into your belly. Take a big breath in until your belly fills with air, and then breathe it all the way out, nice and slow. Do that 10 times, and you will find that your stress level will come down. Your heart rate will be lower, your blood pressure will actually be affected and be lower as well. Have a stress-free day, and we'll see you next time for our next action tip.